ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं
Okay.
पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning, though today is Sunday. I'm sorry for this change because I came to Delhi for some work and I had to change the schedule slightly. So today we are going to start this new subject called Varnashram. Now this is a very, on the one hand, very interesting subject. On the other hand, it is very maligned subject in so many ways. And it is important to understand this in the right perspective. If you happen to be in South Block sometime, particularly in the reception area of the Prime Minister's office, you will see on the ceiling of that office that whole Varnashram, Vyavastha has been placed in the form of a painting there. And this was done by the British, not by us, because this is a very ancient, the old painting which was done when the South Block was constructed. So this is one of the foundations of what we call Sanatan Dharma. And we should understand this in the proper perspective because there's a lot of misgivings on this whole system. Now, this whole arrangement is based in Rigved. In Rigved, there is a Purush Sukta. Purush Sukta is one of the very important, element of Rigved or important pronouncement of Rigved, where they talk about how this universe came into existence. They start with Purusha and how Purusha created this world and how this universe is run and controlled. So in that context, the verse number 12 of Purush Sukta actually talks about Varnashram system. Let me, read out the English version of 2-3 verses of this Purush Sukta to give you an idea what it looks like, because this is in the context of the manifestation of the Almighty in the form of this universe. Now it is in the 10th mandala, 90th hymn, 90th hymn of 10th mandala of Rigveda. The first verse of Purush Sukta reads like this: the Purusha has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, thousands of feet. He pervades all over the land, entire cosmos and beyond. Now this is, meaning is that the universal consciousness, Purusha is basically universal consciousness, or we can call it Almighty, or we can call it, whatever name you give doesn't matter. You may call him Allah or Christ or Holy Spirit or, Ram or Krishna or Paramatma, whatever name. It is that the force which is pervading the entire universe. So the very first sukta tells you that the thousands feet and head, this is just basically symbolic. It means that he pervades the entire land, entire cosmos and beyond. That is what it says, that he is everywhere. It is exactly the same in the first verse of Isavasya Upanishad, when he says, Isavasya midam sarvam jagatyam jagat. That is, Isa is, that is Ishwar, is nivas, vasya midam, nivas karta hai. The Ishwar is, prevalent or pervading the entire moving and non-moving universe. That is what the first line of the first verse of Isavasya Upanishad says. And exactly the same is the meaning of this verse of Purush Sukta from Rigveda. The second verse of this Purush Sukta tells you that all this
Sorry,
manifestation,
Babu.
So we talked about the first verse of Purush Sukta, which tells us that Purush has thousands of heads, thousands of feet, thousands of eyes, and he pervades over entire land, cosmos, and beyond. It basically means that the Almighty pervades everywhere. That is what it means, and which is also the meaning of the first part of the first verse of Isavasya Upanishad. The second verse of Purush Sukta tells us that all this manifestation is Purusha alone. Purusha basically is Paramatma, or whatever name as I mentioned, you can call him. That all this manifestation is he alone. It is his manifestation. Whatever was, whatever will be, he alone is. Whatever was, whatever will be, he alone is. There is nothing except him. The whole existence is woven by the immortal essence of the Supreme Lord, by surrendering to whom one descends the gross world. So this is the second verse of the Purush Sukta, which tells us that everything which is manifested in this universe is him alone. There is nothing beyond that. That is what this Purush Sukta continues with 16 verses, one after another. And I do not want to go into all the verses because that would be a different topic altogether. But the verse number 12 of this Sukta talks about Varnashram system in the context of the creation, in the context of the manifestation of this universe. Actually, in Sanatan Dharma, we don't call it creation, we call it manifestation, because this is manifestation of the universal spirit. So verse number 12 of this Purush Sukta reads like this. The Brahmanas were created from his mouth, the Kshatriyas came from his arms, the Vaishyas were his thighs, and Shudras were his feet. And this becomes a sort of what you call modern controversy. Now, what we call is ang. Ang body के जो अंग होते हैं ना, जैसे अलग-अलग अंग, they are all integrated one. There is no superior part or inferior part in the body. Body works as one single unit, fully connected. So your interpretation that feet is inferior than the brain, I think that is absolutely wrong interpretation to begin with. It is one integrated whole which operates the entire universe, and that integrated whole has been just manifested in this verse in the form of a human form. That human being appears like this, and in that this part represents Brahman, this Kshatriya, this Vaishya, and this Sudra. Now that misinterpretation has led to a lot of problems, but let us understand it in deeper sense, then we will come. Before we go into the details, we should also understand this in verse number 13 of chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. The same thing has been mentioned there. Of course, the words are different, but a similar thing is mentioned there. And the Hindi, translation of that verse number 13 of 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita reads like this. ब्राह्मण क्षत्रिय वैश्य और शूद्र इन चार वर्णों का समूह गुण और कर्मों के विभाग पूर्वक मेरे द्वारा रचा गया है. So this is the same fact which has been mentioned here, and it has been talked by Lord Krishna in this verse number 13 of chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, where he tells gun or karmo ke vibhag. So we will talk about this now. Brahman, you see, in nobody can deny that in every society in the world there are 4 primary divisions of humans. in every single society wherever you go. There are some people who are intellectually strong. They pursue the path of knowledge. They have curiosity to know about things more and more. And this kind of people who are involved in, for example, either learning or teaching or scientific experiments or other sorts of experiments to know about this universe are called Brahmans. Now, this is a quality, gun. Gun is that you want to know about the existence. You want to understand this existence which surrounds us. And that existence, uh, creates a curiosity in your mind that how do I understand it? How do I research it? How do I work on it? Now, today's science, for example, is going through the what we call root of matter. They want to break the matter and want to find out how this universe came into being. The ancient people worked in a different way. They thought it was spiritual, and this was not possible to discover through the material route, but there's a different route. So the route could be different, but the pursuit is the same. The pursuit is basically to understand the reality of our existence. So those people who pursued this path were called Brahmans, and that is how this quality. That's what Krishna says, gun or karm. Karm comes later, gun comes first. Gun is the attribute which leads to the quality later, which leads to the karm later on. For example, you have a seed. You have a seed of a lemon tree. Now that seed has the gun of lemon tree. So once you put it in the earth and nurture it, the tree will come out. The gun will be manifested in the form of a plant or a tree. So that manifestation is can be called karma. Like in our society, there are a lot of people who have inclination to become scientists or to become spiritual, pursuit. They want to follow spiritual pursuit. Some people want to become professors and teachers. Now that quality is manifested later on when they actually adopt a work and they display that quality in that work. So that is the relationship between gun and karma. You have a hidden quality. That quality is manifested when actually you work, engage yourself in some activity and do that work, and that quality comes out. So this is the first one. The Brahmanas were those people who followed intellectual pursuit to understand the reality of this world or to understand, the mysteries of our existence. The second was Kshatriya. Now it versus the Kshatriya, his arms became Kshatriya. The arms, the shoulders are the, you know, symbolic expression of the power, physical power. The physical power is displayed by our arms and chest and that shoulder area. And that is what it says, that some people have been created physically strong. And those people were called Kshatriya. These people have the quality to engage in physically strong works. Those could be, for example, to safeguard the society, to protect the society against foreign invasion, to face the enemy, to sacrifice life in a war if it is needed, to rule a class of people because of their prowess, their physical prowess. So the physical prowess of a person was linked to Kshatriya. Now this is a quality which exists in some human being, which everybody is not intellectually strong. Everybody cannot pursue intellectual pursuits. There are some people who pursue that. There are other set of people who are physically strong and they pursue their physical strength in one way or the other. Now that strength was described and that was compared with this part of the human body and described as Kshatriya. So this is the second, quality of the four I would say, broad qualities of human beings. This is the second quality. And you will find that the Kshatriyas exist in every society around the world. For example, in the samurai race in Japan, it's basically Kshatriya. They are people who want to engage in physical prowess. There are a lot of people who work in armies of different countries. They work because they have that physical pursuit, the physical prowess. For example, I do not have that physical prowess. I cannot become part of an army and cannot work successfully there. I would be misfit there, even if I go there. So the idea is that I should be pursuing an activity which is in consonance to my attributes, my good, my qualities. So the quality of this person has given him the physical prowess, and therefore he should follow that quality to be more comfortable in his life, to achieve the mission of human life in a very comfortable way. The third is Vaishyas are the thighs. This is actually denoting that movement. The people who can engage themselves in, for example, agriculture, in trading activity, in industrial activity, it shows movement. It is also showing to some extent rajogun, that the quality of, pursuing objective for a reward, pursuing something for a reward. So this is the third set of people who are engaged in either agriculture or industrial activity or trading activities, which have been called as Vaishyas. You go around the world anywhere. There are some people who are fit more for trading activity. Like I found Chinese people. They are very clever in trading and industrial activities. When I lived in Mongolia, I met a lot of Chinese people there, and I found that they were very much inclined towards trade and industrial activities. I'm not talking about every Chinese, I'm talking about people in general. Similarly, there are people in the Western world who are very industrious, who are deeply oriented in agriculture, in trading activities. In fact, in the Western civilization, you will find more and more people engaged in this kind of enterprise. They are more having the quality of Vaishyas. Even within our countries, you will find Gujaratis, Marwadis, Sindhis more inclined towards business activity or agricultural activity or this kind of thing. This is their trait, and they feel comfortable doing this. So that is the third, general, I would say, classification of humans, which is based on this quality. The fourth quality is the quality of service. That is has been compared with, denoted with foot, because you do the movement, lot of movement in service. Now today in India, the service industry contributes to our GDP almost 55%. You see. Now that does not mean that people who are working in those, they are untouchable or they are inferior in their nature. It has nothing to do with that. Ang, these are, when we talk about ang of the body parts, they are all integrated whole. They work together. They are not, working in isolation. So this comparison that those who are working with their brain, they are superior to those who are working with their work and with their hard labor, I think that is the mistake which happened at some stage in our history, and it was pursued by some people who wanted to dominate the society. Maybe they were some section of Brahmanas, or maybe that was some section of Kshatriyas, who created these conditions and made comparisons that Shudras are lower and Brahmanas are, the topmost people in the society. That is where the problem arose. As Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, these are the gun, these are the qualities. And these qualities are manifested in four classifications, general classifications of human beings throughout the world. I have traveled to many countries around the world and I have seen these four qualities being manifested practically in all societies. Even in Western society, there is a very clear distinction they call clergy. Clergy is basically, you can call the religious people or people who are following the mental or intellectual pursuits. Then they have nobility, which is closer to our Kshatriyas, and then they have ordinary people, and then they have serfs. So all this, it is not only in India, it is everywhere. This has been manifested in the form of human qualities. Even amongst our small group, you will find that some people are intellectually stronger, some people are stronger in business and industrial sense, and some people are stronger in service sense. It does not mean that we are, inferior and superior to each other. That is the wrong interpretation which was given at some stage by some vested interested, those people who are having their vested interest, and that created all this, what we call, misconception of this system of varna. We are not talking of ashram today, we are only talking of varna, four varnas. So this actually was further divided into caste system and subcaste system. Now this is the depreciation, or what you call, the vikar. It's basically the misrepresentation of facts and misrepresentation of facts by vested interest people to say that I am superior and you are inferior. And then it was linked with birth. It has nothing to do with birth. As clearly mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, it has everything to do with your attributes, with your inherent qualities which you inherit at the time of your birth. So it is not connected with birth. A Brahman son need not be Brahman necessarily. He can be Shudra, he can be Kshatriya, he can be Vaishya, he can be any other, caste out, any other varna out of the four. The, if he has the quality of following intellectual pursuit, yes, then we can say that he is depicting these qualities and he is Brahman. So this is the misconception which we have, brought into our society, which was linked with birth at some stage, which became very rigid at some stage, and then it was linked with what you call marriage institution, that you should marry within your own caste system. Then it was, linked to the work you are doing. All this was created by some people in the, what you, I don't know, 6th, 7th, 8th century in our history, when this corruption in our system came in, and that corruption was brought in by the vested interest people, and that is how today this whole thing is looked down by variety of people. It is exactly the same thing as, we can speak what we can speak words. All of us have the power to speak. Now you can speak good words, you can speak bad words, you can abuse somebody, you can praise somebody. Now that same money, the same speech can be used or misused. Similarly, the fact that the human race has been divided into four broad categories based on these four attributes is the truth. Now it is in human hands how we have used or misused this truth. This truth has been misused by the people who wanted to dominate the society, who wanted to create their own empire, who wanted others to serve them, who wanted them to look mean. And that is where the whole system got corrupted. The whole system actually degenerated into a very degraded system which we experienced overnight, which we experienced in the last few centuries. I think that system each has brought a bad name to Indian society because it was wrongly interpreted, it was misinterpreted. But it is a fact that the whole human race has these four broad categories, and that cannot be denied anywhere in the world. You can go anywhere in the world, you will find people who pursue intellectual pursuit, the people who are, progress driven, who want to show their courage and their power, physical power, those people who want to do, pursue agriculture and industrial activities, and those people who are interested in other services. This is a universal fact. This cannot be denied anywhere. So this is what I wanted to clarify on the world. Now let us go to ashram. Ashram is, the division of human life into four parts. Now that is again a very scientific classification of human life. This is designed to make your life systematic so that you can progress in your life in a very balanced way and then you can achieve the mission of human life. It is true that in the first part of human life, that is first 20-25 years, we all have to learn. We all have to learn how to conduct ourselves, how to live, how we can manage our life. So the pursuit of knowledge is universal. Go anywhere in the world. First 20 to 25 years are actually dedicated to pursuit of knowledge. And that was called brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means you pursue your knowledge. The name came because you follow a conduct following the qualities of Brahma. Brahma ka acharan. You do the acharan of the Brahma or dincharya of the Brahma. Means you become a noble being. You try to learn noble skills. You try to learn good things in that part of life so that you can become a better human being later on. So the Brahmacharya ashram came into being into the first part of human life, first 25 years, that you learn good things, you become capable so that you can pursue your life in a meaningful way later on. This is true. You can see it everywhere in the world. Everybody does it. The schools and the colleges and the universities are meant for that. And the structure of education has changed. It is true. And the structure is no more brahmacharya. It has become more oriented towards economics now. We can call it arthcharya in that sense, because most of the education is dominated by the desire to earn more. Earlier, most of the education was dominated by desire to become a good human being, and that is why it was brahmacharya. So today we can call it arthcharya, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that the first 25 years of life, or 20 to 25 years of life, are dedicated to learning, to understand this world, to understand yourself, to understand the reality of our existence, and also to learn some skills so that you can pursue your livelihood in a meaningful way. So that is the first part of ashram system. The second part of ashram system is grahastha ashram. That after learning your basic knowledge, then you engage and follow a family life. The family life is a natural desire. It is based on our desire of Kam Shakti, because without that the world cannot be run. We are all product of Kam Shakti. Without Kam you cannot give birth to the next generation. So this is a necessity, because in order to run this world, this capability has been given to every man and woman. and the man and woman have been made complementary. There's a lot of effort today to make them equal. There's nothing wrong. They are not superior or inferior to each other, but basically they have different qualities. They are different biological disposition, and they have to work according to that disposition to make things happen properly. But that is a different issue. We will not go into that. What I'm saying is that we adopt a proper family life. One gets married, have children, and discharge your functions. This is also called in our system Pitra Rin. The brahmacharya is actually, guru rin. That is, you repay your debt to the guru, and here you repay your debt to your father. Father gave birth to you, and you give birth to the next generation, and that is, it is called pitra rin. You repay that debt by giving birth to children, so that the world can continue to run. In this life you are supposed to look after your family, you are supposed to perform your duties to the family and other relations, and you have to see that your children are properly brought up, they are getting good education so that they become equally good citizens later on. So all these responsibilities have to be discharged in the second part of our life, which is called grahasthashram. So we have brahmacharya ashram, we have grahastha ashram. After the grahastha, we get into vanprastha ashram. Now, vanprastha ashram is designed that you have enough experience. Firstly, you got good learning in brahmacharya. Then you experience the world and the realities of the, working in this world when you were in grahastha ashram. So you have enough knowledge. Like most of us are in this vanprastha ashram now, the third section of our life after 50 years, that 50 to 75, where whatever experience you have gained, whatever learning you have acquired, you can share these learnings with others, so that the society at large can benefit from your learnings, and they can upgrade themselves based on your knowledge, because everybody cannot pass through the entire learning process. For example, if you want to know whether the fire burns your hand, everybody doesn't have to put his finger on the fire and burn the finger to see that actually it burns. No, one person has done it, and you learn from the others that this is the truth. So this is how we learn the truth from our seniors, from the people who have experienced this life, and they tell you that this is the truth, and we accept that truth and move forward. So this particular ashram, vanprastha ashram, enables you to share your experience, your knowledge with the society at large, and also with your own family members, with all your friend circles, and tell them that this is what we should do in our life later on, because you are sharing this knowledge with the younger generation, and you are telling them this is what you should do because this is based on my experience. That is why we say there is no substitute for experience in life, and experience comes with age. It is it comes with your work also, but there are certain things which come only with age. Nothing can defy that. For example, you can become adult only with age. There's nothing else can do. A child will remain child. It's only with age that you become adult. And then you become, what you call wise. You become wise person only after experiencing the family life. Then the wisdom dawns on you, and then you share this wisdom with the rest of the society. So that is why the role of the people who are in the third ashram, vanprastha ashram, is extremely important, because they are the flag bearers of knowledge. They are the flag bearer of wisdom. They are the one who become gurus. They are the one who become mentor for the younger generation, and their teachings are extremely important for keeping the quality of life in the younger generation. So that is very important. It is our responsibility to repay the what you call guru rin, the rin of our teacher in this third ashram. In the first, we take the rin. In the third, we discharge that by sharing our experience with the rest of the world. You share experience whatever you have. It is not that everybody has identical experience. No, everybody has different experience. Some people have experience of in industry and trade. Some people have experience of how to manage family life better. Some people have experience of the understanding the reality of life. So all these experiences are shared, and then you discharge your what you call duties, and that is you repay your debt. You are not indebted. You repay this debt, and then you become ready for the final phase of your life, that is called sannyas, that you leave all this world. And leave does not mean that you have to go to the forest. No, leave means you detach yourself from this. You become detached and devote yourself to the supreme power which has manifested in the form of this universe. And that is the time when you can align yourself with that supreme power and disengage from the world slowly, because this disengagement is not easy process. It takes a lot of time. That is what Krishna says, detachment or disengagement. You have to, you have many attractions in this world. There are a lot of what you call pillars of attraction. You are attracted by wealth, you are attracted by power, you are attracted by prestige, you are attracted by ego, that I am somebody, something. And there are sexual desires which keep attracting you. So all these attractions are very strong. Getting disengaged from those attractions is the test of the fourth step, the fourth, ashram, sannyas ashram. Sannyas means you actually detach yourself, and go away from the world, not physically, but in your mind, in your actions. The detachment should come from actions, not from mind. It should come from, in your day-to-day behavior, that things are not bothering you. You are not bothered by your praise or by your criticism, who gives you, who doesn't give you, because you have enough experience by this time. You have seen the different phases of life and different facets of life, and you are competent enough to, make a distinction between what is real and what is non-real. And therefore, we should detach from the non-real and come to the real. And that is what the fourth ashram is meant for, sannyas ashram. Now, these two things, varna and ashram, they have been designed to make human life smooth, systematic, productive, and meaningful. These were scientific inventions done by our ancestors to make a life which is moving smoothly, which is moving on a properly paved road. For example, if everybody has to make discoveries on different routes, what is suitable for me, what is not suitable for me, what path I should follow, what path I don't follow, then it becomes complicated because you waste a lot of time in that process. So they wanted to give you a paved road on which you can travel smoothly. And that was the purpose of this, explaining this Varn and ashram system. One is a discovery of the human traits which are existing here, but just to discover them, that there are four, major variety of humans, and it would be comfortable if they follow their own trait. If a person who is fit for following intellectual pursuit and he goes into business, I think he will be a failure. Similarly, a person who is designed to follow business and industry, he goes into the intellectual pursuit, he will be a failure as well. So to avoid those kind of mishaps in life, this path was designed. The path was designed by our ancestors in a very profound scientific study done on human race. And based on that study, they gave you these four varnas and four ashrams so that you can live a life which is meaningful, which gives you satisfaction, which raises your consciousness to a higher level, so that when you come back in this world in the next birth, you are raised in a different way, your consciousness is higher, and you can continue to follow this pursuit. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, this was firstly misinterpreted by humans. Whenever things go into the human hands, somewhere there's always, damage done. There's depreciation which happens. It's like the water which comes from the source in the river. It's purest when it comes from the source. Like Gangotri comes from a Ganga comes from Gangotri. The water at Gangotri would be purest. Slowly, slowly, when it flows down and goes down to Ganga Sagar in Bay of Bengal, it accumulates lot of impurities, and then the process restarts, because then the same water goes up in the form of clouds and then comes back to Gangotri and starts the purity. So this cycle of purity getting turned into impurities is a perpetual cycle in this world. It continues, and that is the cycle here as well as in human life. And our ancestors designed the system to make this cycle very systematic, to make it meaningful for the human race. And I think at some stage, somehow, the people with vested interest misused this whole perception and derailed the process completely. So I think it would be good to explain this properly to the younger generation, that this is not designed in a particularly in a graded way. It is not that the Brahman is superior to Kshatriya and Kshatriya is superior to Vaishya. It is not that. It is not linear. It is ang, that the four parts of the body. These ang are all working in an integrated fashion. They work together. They cogently integrate our entire activity in one single unit, and that is what this whole purpose was, and that is what we should understand and we should explain, because these four qualities of humans are existent everywhere. Nobody can deny it. Various researches have been done. Gustav Jung has done a research on that. He has also come out with the four qualities. You can see these qualities everywhere in the world. They exist. And similarly, the four stages of life, each one of us can feel it. They are designed to regulate our life in a very smooth and very scientific way. And I hope we can adopt that science again and follow it in the proper perspective, rather than you know using or misusing it in the way which we did. And ultimately, the problem of untouchability, the problem of deep-rooted caste and subcaste system, that has created a lot of derailments in our society, a lot of problems in our society. I think we need to overcome that and understand the system in its original proper perspective. So I would like to stop here on the Varnashram. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them. Thank you very much.